welcome to tonight's regularly scheduled meeting of the ISD 191 School Board. It is November 17th, 6:30, and we're going to get going. So right off, I'd like to welcome all who are joining us in person and those who are joining us on via television. We would like to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, and would Director Vanderboom please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have a couple presentations from a community perspective and a future perspective as well. We'll start off. Okay. Hi, Amy.
Hi. Okay, my kids.
I have you listed seconds. That's why I was.
Okay, good, because the kids, they all decided to have a business dinner at Jensen's, and so Tessa Lattery's mom is over there now. She was standing here waiting for them, so she drove over there really fast. I don't know.
So, Amy, welcome.
Hi.
How are you?
I am good, thanks. Thanks for having us. I can give our first slide. David, you want first? Yeah.
Oh,
They're gonna be so embarrassed now. They were so nervous.
Okay, well, that was originally
I'm
what we
so
had.
sorry.
You want to- No.
Yeah. Okay.
No problem.
Oh,
We will talk with Amy in a minute.
sorry.
We'll go back to Community Strong and our Discover BHS report from Dave Helpy, our principal of Blissville High School. Welcome, David.
Yes, good evening, and I just got to find the right.
He loves it when we call him David. Reminds me of his mother.
Okay, this is a touchy mouse. There we go. Okay, it is. Maybe my tech skills on show here in public. Okay, there we go. We're set. So I'm glad to be here this evening to just give an update on Discover BHS. And really, Discover BHS was the first event of a series of events that we've just completed today, in which we invited community members and business partners into the high school to showcase some of the new spaces and the new programs that we have. So Discover BHS really did kick it all off back on November 1st. And it really was a collaborative effort, a team effort that involved many of our staff and many of our students. And you can see here we had our Burnsville Strong students helping not only at the welcome and greeting table, but they really helped throughout the event. And they helped to give tours, they were helping with wayfinding through the hallways, and just an incredible asset for us to have at the school. So a huge thank you. Public thank you to our Burnsville Strong students that spent their evening with us, showcasing their school and sharing the great things that are happening there. So the overview, it was our third annual. We have done it in the past, more in the spring. This was the first time we held it in the fall. And it really kind of also acted as a sort of a grand opening for us. The majority of the school was complete at that time, and so people really did get to walk around and see all the new spaces that exist there. And it was open to everyone from the community, and we did have a nice slice of our community that attended. I mean, we had many parents or former parents. I ran into community members that had graduated from the high school or have had children graduate from the high school in the past, as well as families that currently live in our district that either have children there or children that are in elementary that will be up at the high school. We estimate we had about 500 attendees. We had around 38 staff members that participated that evening, and probably 80 to 100 students that were there as well helping us out. It did include the opportunity to tour. We had a lot of individuals that did take us up on the self-guided tour, just kind of coming in and having a chance to walk around and see the different areas in the building. This was the map that they were all provided, highlighted some of the areas, some of the new areas, some of our specialty areas. And what was nice is people could choose where they wanted to go, where they wanted to spend their time. Some people had more of an interest possibly in the auto and construction area. They could spend more time there as opposed to maybe over in the activity center or the Morass Center. So We did design the evening so that the entire building was open and people had that opportunity to see it all. We did have a more structured 30-minute presentation as part of Discover VHS. Dr. Gothard shared kind of the Vision 191 and the overall picture of the work that we're doing. And then we had a student panel that shared some of their experiences, and that was moderated by Jeff Nelson, a math teacher at the high school. The students have been invaluable. I mean, they have been part of giving tours for these last 2 weeks. And all the feedback, everybody comes up, and that is what people really appreciate, is hearing from the kids. Their stories are genuine, their experiences are real, and it really helps people understand what is going on at the high school and the types of opportunities that we have. We had a nice crowd, many people that attended the presentation, which included the panel that I just spoke about. And then after that, individuals had the opportunity again to tour, whether it was self-guided, or we did do a lot of guided tours as well that evening. And the guided tours took people to the different areas that would be showcasing some of our pathways and some of the special things at Burnsville High School. What you see here is our culinary program. This is our first year with the culinary program. The students all have their own chef uniforms. It's amazing what the instructor, Matt Deutsch, has been able to do in a short, I mean, the reality was we were at about 7 or 8 weeks at the time of this event. And so the students were demonstrating their cutting skills, and they actually made a dip that people could taste as well at the event. Then we also had students that were just showcasing, using some of the technology that is available at the high school. This happens to be in the Tech Suite Fab Lab area. This is a 3D printer that was, and the whole Fab Lab was open that evening so people could see the 3D printers, the laser cutters, the CNC mills. And the other equipment, and that was a huge hit for many people. Lots of questions, people wondering, you know, what kind of jobs can you get if you know how to do this? People asking what these different machines are used for. So I think not only was an event to share the spaces at the high school, but it really did help educate some of our community members on the types of learning that students can have at the high school. Auto shop was open, our construction area was open, so people could go out there. And when I said we had probably 80 to 100 students, many of the students were invited by their teachers to be there that night so that people could actually see students doing some of the things that are done in these spaces. And so Mr. Tesmer, Mr. Wolf had students out in the construction and auto area, and the students were able to not only showcase what they do, but were able to show off some of the machinery and some of the tools that are available for them to use. We also had many of our activities and clubs that were available. This is robotics, so a chance for people to see not only what happens during the day, but to see the opportunities that students have to get involved in after school. The one that stood out and I thought had a strong showing that night was the mountain bike club. And I know a lot of people did not realize that we had a mountain bike club until that night when they walked by and they saw that particular table there. One of the tour groups, again, we had so many students and so many students that were trained for the tours that we were able to do a lot of small group tours, so people were able to ask a lot of questions, and it was a little bit more personalized than possibly walking in a tour group of 15, 20 people. The one thing that we all noticed is with the increased size of our building, everybody was like, geez, there was a lot of people sitting in the presentation. Where did they all go? Well, what we realized is we have so much square footage now around the building that when you spread all these people out, it's a big building, and when you walk from one end to the other, you start to realize how much real estate exists at the high school. There was a lot of information put out there on social media, so some people ask, how did you get information out about it? Really did utilize Facebook, and there's some numbers there. It's amazing the numbers of people and hits that you can reach through Facebook, Instagram as well, and then Twitter. And again, just some of those numbers in terms of hits And, and then the top tweet, again, it was a picture that was out there, 5,445 impressions. So there was definitely an excitement, a lot of positive energy, and there was many tweets out there. I was retweeting some of them, and it was enjoyable to see the pride that people were taking in the event. So here's Dan. There was some promotional posters and Facebook pieces that were sent out, just with different students talking about Burnsville High School and what it has meant to them. And so Dan is talking about being involved on the sports teams and how that's helped him organize his schedule, and then the social skills and that connection to later in life. And here's Eggie. Everyone at BHS wants me to be successful and happy and does everything in their power to help me get there. If that doesn't say family, I don't know what will. That quote, I think, captures a lot of what I heard with the student panel, and a lot of the feedback I was getting from people that were walking around is just the pride that students and adults take in the school, and the community, and the family nature of the student body. So we had some survey results. There was a few people that did take us up on our offer to give us some feedback. A lot of it mirrored what we heard individually there, just overwhelmingly positive experiences. People really liked, again, student tour, student panel, and the students. That was truly the hit. And then some recommendations, maybe look at, adding tech and trades, or making sure our panel is inclusive across all of our pathways. Maybe focus some of that conversation with students on how are they being prepared for college and career. And then a lot of people liked being able to go on their own tour, but they were just asking maybe for a little bit more detailed or something a little bit more structured to take with them as they toured through the school. So again, a huge thank you. I mean, this was truly a team effort. There was a planning committee, Katie Burke, Matt Deutsch, Mary Lou Dundon, Jeff Marshall, Aaron Tinkelberg, along with all of our Burnsville Strong students and advisors, and along with all of our teachers and staff that put time into either planning, reaching out to students, or actually being there that evening so that our community could come into the high school and see what's going on and see all the valuable things that the students in our community have to take advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Dave? I know several of us were there.
It was a fabulous evening, and I hope we do a second one even toward the end of the year, because there are so many members of the public, I think, that want to get in and see that building. And it's just
It's me.
Okay. The students that gave the tours were unbelievably great about knowing what, you guys had them prepared. They did a fabulous job with all the parents that I was with. And I just say, if our community members haven't been in that high school, even the graduates from that high school, I think we need to give them at least another opportunity, even this year, to go and see it again. And I know it was a lot of work, but I got to tell you, I think, when people see all the opportunities and capabilities that we have, and they see our students, and you did a very nice job in your presentation of describing, some of the good things that came out of that. I think we need to do it again. Sorry to say, but I'm sure that's not necessarily the first thing you want to hear, but I just think it was a fabulous experience, and I'd love to see another 500 more, Thank you.
Obviously, we have, I'm going to also pass our thanks on to you and the planning committee and all the various people, as well as students, staff, etc. It was really well-run, smooth, and it was just excellent opportunity for people to see the high school, not only with the new construction, which we all have had pretty much a lot of focus on lately, but really what's going on there, the programs, the students, the teachers, and so on. I mean, that's the critical part. That's the most important part. So thank you again, Dave, and thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I'm going to try my... So next up, well, it just doesn't like me at all tonight, does it? So next up then would be our ninth grade script writing project, and the presenter is Amy Stead, and I see she has a number of some of those delightful students we were just talking about. Welcome, all of you.
Hi. All right, I'm gonna let the kids introduce themselves quickly.
Hi, I'm Liam Thomas. I'm a sophomore at PHS.
Hi, I'm Tessa Lattery. I'm a junior at PHS.
Hi, I'm Emma Walkenack, and I'm a freshman at PHS.
Hi, I'm Casey Hensey. I'm also a freshman at PHS.
And I'm Amy Stead, and I'm the only teacher that goes to the photocopy room, and the lady tells me, no, just put the last four digits of your ID number, and I'm like, I only have four. And she's like, no, just the last four. I'm like, no, lady, I've been around for a long time. Anyways, so we are gonna talk about a brief moment in the life of Angus Bethune. I'm just gonna talk for a minute and then hand this over to them. And I just wanna say that we included this quote about grit, well, I did. Heroes are never perfect, but they're brave, they're authentic, they're courageous, determined, discreet, and they've got grit. And that character Angus Bethune certainly has grit. Chris Crutcher, now that we know, has grit. And man, do these guys have grit. And I just am super impressed. I'm gonna let Tessa, will you read this quote? This is one of our favorite quotes out of the story.
The quote says, "You do not understand. Superman's not brave. He's smart, he's handsome, he's even decent, but he's not brave. He's indestructible. You can't be brave when you're indestructible. It's guys like you and me that are brave, Angus. Guys who are different and can be crushed and know it. Go out there anyways."
And I just want to talk about where this idea came from. I've had this idea in the back of my head for more than a few years. This is a short story that I've read with my students for, oh gosh, probably 6, 7 years now. And when I was asked to coordinate the student-directed one act, I decided I'm just going to send an email to Chris Crutcher and act. So I found his website and fan site or whatever online, and I just clicked on it and sent him an email. And he replied within 10 minutes, and he said, I check this email about once every 3 months. And he just was like, absolutely, go ahead, knock yourself. I mean, he couldn't have been kinder. And he is an award-winning YA novelist who in 2000 received his Margaret Edwards Award from the American Library Association for his lifetime contribution in writing. He has got an incredible voice. It's smart, it's clever, it's tight. And I just knew that this was something that would be absolutely perfect. And I just put it out on the theater Facebook page and asked kids. And we have a number of seniors too, and yeah, and then one more junior, but they're all in Les Mis tonight, so you're getting the abbreviated version. But and I have to tell you, I've been so impressed by this, because what you guys just did is real world adulting. Like, they have met as a team, developed this wonderful thing, communicated with people, put it together, and now they're gonna take this idea and put it on a stage and hand it off to somebody else. So it has to be with clarity, and it's just, and we Skyped with Chris Crutcher last week, and so I'm gonna let you guys take it from here. Can you see I'll back up, so just talk away.
So when we were Skyping Chris Crutcher, we got a couple pictures taken, and this is one of our favorites because it shows us all involved. And we, during when we were Skyping with Chris Crutcher, we were asking him lots of questions about the script and what we could do with the script. We had 1.5 hours Skyping with him, and honestly, it was one of the most exhilarating experiences in my educational career so far.
Yeah, I second that. It was very, very interesting. He gave us a lot of insight, and it was very insightful, I guess. It was incredible to see everything from his point of view, what he thought we could change, what he encouraged us to change. I think was very exciting as well, 'cause
I think that it was like super inspiring, like kind of building on that, like after the Skype call, like it just made me want to like work on this script and like perfect it and make it like even better than it already was. And like it was just so great to get ideas from someone that is a published author. Like it's just such a unique experience. And yeah.
Well, I agree with what all they said, but it was also really nice because we've all been friends and we've had experiences in theater before with each other, but it was really nice because I just remember after Skyping how excited and giddy everyone was that we just Skyped with a real author. So it was nice to share this experience with people, and we've gotten to be pretty close, I would say, over the past couple of weeks.
they talked about the process a lot too, and he really engaged you guys in conversation about that. So I just sat back and went, oh my word.
So these were kind of like things that we had to really like take into like consideration when we were writing this, and like making sure that we were able to collaborate without like making the story too choppy. Because like everyone kind of has a different voice with their writing style, and we had to make sure that it all flowed together.
We also had to make sure that we stayed as true to Chris Crutcher's words as possible, because as Ms. Stead said, his words are so inspiring and they're so authentic. We really didn't want to change them all that much because it makes the script so much more interesting to listen to and read.
Yeah, and another big thing for us was adding characters in spots in order, because Angus has such huge monologues that were we to put it as it was completely written in the short story, it would just be Angus up there just reading the story. And so we like to add characters to bring kind of a different dynamic to it and to kind of break it up so that more people have talking parts and, it's more interesting. And so that's been something that's been interesting, because we have to decide, okay, well, who's going to get a bigger part? How are we going to break this down? And that was one of our challenges that we had to overcome.
And then the next thing we did was we learned from the author to not be afraid to push our boundaries, because one of the most important things that he told us was that we could run with the story and take it wherever we wanted to. But we thought, all of us agreed that it was really important to keep to his words, just because part of what makes the story so great is the timeline that it's set in and the context of what's happening in that timeline, and we didn't want to change it at all, so.
And I think that it was kind of challenging to take a story from like entirely in Angus's head and put it out in words and actions and like dialogue, because it's such a great story. And I think that like as a team we did a pretty good job with like sticking to the story without like making it like all Angus.
Mm-hmm.
So
And they took existing characters and had them come in earlier to, to have the dialogues, and they did a really, really good job with that. There's Casey. He was very demonstrative. Chris Crutcher was.
Very animated gentleman.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that we learned from this experience and that we are still learning as we go on. And I think one of them is just kind of learning different perspectives, because it's one thing to do a group project in class where you just kind of all pretend to work together, but just kind of divvy up. But for this, you actually have to engage with other people. And it's like, you actually have to listen and be like, okay, well, I see it from this point of view, but okay, well, no, I can see your point of view now. And it's that differing perspectives that's really interesting, and it's something that we can use actually like going into the real world. So I thought that was really, really interesting.
it was, sorry, go ahead.
It was also very fun and challenging because we had to figure out how to put his words into a script. Because a script is very different than a short story, because you have to have more than one character speaking, otherwise it's like a one-person show. And it was also really hard because we had to figure out what parts we wanted Angus to say and what parts we wanted the characters to act out to make the show more enjoyable for the audience.
Well, I think that like it's nice because we were all a cohesive group, and once someone had like an idea, we would all kind of start running with it, and it would like get altered into something really great and like something that all of us created together. That's what I like about this story, is it's not like this part is what I did, this part is what Emma did. It's all stuff that we all did together as a group.
The next thing that we learned was to think outside the box. This story, Ms. Stead likes to say this a lot, but it's not an issues play. It doesn't deal with any social issues. It's just about a boy and how something that was supposed to kind of embarrass him turned into his moment, and it made him a better person, and it kind of just, he took it and made it his moment instead of making a big deal about it. So in some ways that was hard for us to write because, we wanted to keep true to the author's words, but we didn't really know how to, we didn't none of us lived during the 70s, which is when the time period took place. So it was really hard to for us to keep true, and that's why I loved having Miss Stead, because she grew
He's
up.
old, say it.
She just gave us some insight.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just, you know, we got to learn how to stay true to the story, but we had to come up with new ideas and, you know, invent new characters and stuff like that to keep the story true.
I watched you guys sometimes struggle with putting your own handprint on it, you know, like, but that's my words, but he gave them permission. He said, no, take this and tell this story. He gave them permission to set it in a different time frame, but we had already made the decision to keep it in the 70s. And do you want to tell her what the issues that the kid has are? Like what he's dealing with as a background?
Yeah, so if you are not familiar with the story, Angus Bethune is a very interesting character. He is an 18-year-old boy who has 2 divorced parents, and they each are married. Remarried. He has 2 moms and 2 dads. However, the 2 moms are married to each other, and the 2 dads are married to each other. So it's a little bit different than your normal family.
And then in addition to that, he's also overweight, which is like he's often like
Picked on.
picked on because of that. But it's kind of interesting looking back at this because we're all kind of used to a time where his issues are much more like accepted by society, and it's interesting to look back on it from a time period where that was not accepted.
It does give us kind of a different perspective on the world, because obviously we didn't grow up in that time, so we're used to our perspective of, well, that's okay, it's a little different, but it's okay, when we have to, Stead kind of has to remind us, well, but at this time it wasn't as okay, so.
Well, and I think it made it harder for us because when we grew up, we've seen it, but we've never felt real bullying in our lives. You know, we've never been harassed or anything in our schools, so that we didn't know what that was like, so that was hard to kind of put yourself in their shoes because we never felt that.
And I'd just like to add that is not the focus of the story. The focus of the story is this boy who wants his moment, and he gets it. And he just has grit, and it's not, you know, despite everybody has something going on in the background in their lives. So, it's just, this has been a great experience. There we all are waving with Chris Crutcher. And then we already said this stuff. And you should have a piece of paper in front of you. It's too much text for the, tell them to take a moment to read their text.
So if you guys could take a moment to read Chris Crutcher's text and just reflect on that a little bit, and then we will read to you what we put his words into.
I should frame this with the night he's sitting waiting to go to the dance, the winter ball. He's nervous because he knows what might happen that night, and his parents come in one at a time to try to, and he talks about how, other people have these kind of exciting parents, and I just have actually these 4 really supportive, kind of boring parents, but, and the stepdad comes in, right, with the Kiss Busters t-shirt, and then this is a reflection back to his, he had a tantrum at them, so, all right.
So I'm going to read the part of Angus. The Kiss Busters t-shirt. I gave one to each of my 4 parents a few years ago when I negotiated the no kissing contract. I don't care what you I don't care with who or what you do in the second night. Just don't kiss in front of me. I'm in junior high now, and the jury's in. I like girls. The only people I want to see kissing are boys and girls. Not boys kissing boys, not girls kissing girls. I want to see boys kissing girls, understand? Hairy lips on smooth lips. Read mine. Boys kissing girls.
Angus, do you need us to help you through this? We know it's hard, having a family that's a bit...
You know what I need? You ask me all the time, Angus, are you suffering emotional harm because we're different? Angus, are you feeling angst? Angus, do you need help adjusting? Angus, do you want to see a therapist? I'm not having trouble adjusting. I don't even know what angst is. I don't want to see a therapist. I just don't want to see you kissing. You want to know what I need? I'll tell you, role models, someone to show me how things are done. Don't you guys ever watch Oprah or Donahue?
That was quite the scene. You've been acting out a lot like this lately.
We're worried about you, sweetheart.
It makes us wonder, have you been feeling different lately, or upset?
Do you act out at school? Do we need to call your teachers?
No, that is not the point here. No.
Honey, we're only trying to help you.
It's because we love you.
And the other thing I want to point out is that half of the play takes place, it's a perfect amount of a story to tell in that 30-minute time frame for one act. And the last half of the play is at the dance where all the action happens. And it's the 70s, so I suggested to the kids, yeah, we didn't have a DJ back at my dances. We had bands that poorly played covers. And so we have a group of 5 high school kids who are actually going to be the band, and they're going to sing. And you know, it's funny, we hadn't really looked at the lyrics or thought about these songs. They're both songs that I knew, but Alan Parsons Project's Limelight, and when you read the lyrics, it actually really is relative to the story. And then they end with Bad Moonrise and CCR, but, and, which is kind of funny. So there'll be live students performing on stage too during the play. And now a student has signed on, a senior, to be the student director. So the next piece is for these guys to, you know, gradual release of the baby that they've created and then see it go to stage. And we kind of think it will remain a bit fluid because other people will put their interpretations on it and stuff. So we hope you guys all come to see the Evening of One Acts.
Yeah.
That'll be in January, around the 3rd.
19, 20, 20, 21, Friday, Saturday.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
the weekend in January. How many, I know we have 4 here, how many total playwrights were part of this team?
Douglas,
7?
Blaine, Zach, Megan, and Anna.
Yeah.
7.
And Anna, yeah, well, Anna hasn't been writing,
Yeah.
she's just coming in now as the director.
So 7.
How many?
Yeah, so,
7.
7? Okay. That's challenging in its own.
yeah,
Oh, yes.
ranging in every grade too, so, yeah, I kind of stopped it at that, because I thought we can't, honestly,
big,
it won't
yeah.
work with 30 people, but.
Yeah,
But
we
even though there
have-
was 7 people, I still don't think it was that hard to write the script. Just
Yeah.
'cause-
I think that we all worked well together.
We were very cohesive. We were very, I feel like we were very, you picked us very well because we all worked, we worked well together and we were very respective of each other.
And we'd all had theater experience before, but we all had different theater experience. Like these 3 were on stage,
Yeah.
and I was behind the stage. I was doing student directing, and Blaine and Zach both did kind of the hard work building sets. So we all had something to build from on each other. So I think that also made it part of the cohesiveness that worked so well.
Really good,
Yeah.
keeping in mind what it might look like on a stage and what, you know, how the movement, so, yeah.
It was nice that we all had like experience in general, but different kinds of experience, because then you have all your bases covered. And if there's like a mistake in the script or something that just won't work on stage, someone will catch it and be able to say, no, this would never work on stage. Like, it was just nice to have that, like, such a,
Different perspectives.
Yeah.
And you want to tell them the good news about the finished product?
Once the product is finished, we asked Chris Crutcher this question, and he agreed to it. We are going to try and get this play officially published, and then Chris Crutcher said that most of the proceeds,
No, all.
of the
Yeah.
proceeds would come back to us, and we were thinking of donating it all to the BHS Theater Fund.
Oh, wow.
And this is an award-winning story, so the name, I mean, English teachers especially will catch, I mean, it's a kind of a strange name, but,
Cool.
So that's kind of neat. So they're going to be published. I said,
Way
you
to
guys, this will
go.
look nice on your college resumes.
Absolutely. Well, just the experience, the well-rounded, and actually being able to get an opportunity to interact with the original author. I mean, I think back to in the 70s when I was growing up, and I've already can pick up a little bit of Angus, maybe in me even back then, but not the parent situation. But I grew up in Iowa, obviously, it was really crazy. But anyway, but it did it. That I was like, wow, we didn't even have that capability back then. I mean, it wasn't even something, I mean, unless for some reason somebody knew and that author might come to your school, there wasn't, so this is another way how technology is allowing us to, and allowing you to do things that are just, you couldn't do not that many years ago, really.
And we thought the Skyping would maybe be 15 or 20 minutes, that he'd just be
Yeah.
being polite. But he had the doc shared with him too, so he had opened it and read it and was able to, and everybody had their Chromebooks open, and it was like, really, we are collaborating with Chris Crutcher.
That cool?
Yeah.
It was really
it was-
nice because he treated us like we were young adults rather than just like young children that he's like, haha, that's so cute. Okay, good job. No, he was like really respectful to us and like it was really nice to see that.
Yeah, it's kind of in that moment when you're treated like an adult that you kind of start to feel, like want to stand a little straighter, kind of like feel a little bit more of the responsibilities, like, okay, we can do this.
But you have to realize that when you grew up in the 70s like me, you start to, the straightness starts to kind of go down a little bit as you get older. You kind of, the weight of the world. So, fellow board members, any comments? Director Hill?
You guys are a great example. I don't want to call it a new way of learning, but the excitement that you brought to this learning process. I mean, I would love, for the public to see this and for you to, I hope a lot of people tune in and watch this again to see how, you take somebody like Amy Stead who takes a project, and this is beyond just teaching and learn. I mean, this is a new way, this is an exciting, your excitement is great to see. But all the things, you also got, yes, the scripting, all that. But you also are picking up on the business side of doing this stuff. I mean, if it starts to bring in money, there's a lot of angles involved. And so I'm excited that you're so excited, and great job. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hill.
What a great presentation. What was particularly impressive to me is I think I heard we have a freshman, a sophomore, a junior. I didn't hear if we had a senior or not.
Well, we had 3, but
Yeah.
they're in layman's.
Oh, right, okay, fine. I mean, what a great collaboration, So we talked, we're in our first year of this 9 through 12, and already, we're seeing, I'm sure it would have been 10 through 12 last year. And, so it's great to see all the different classes come together on such a neat little project. And, the Skyping. I don't remember Donahue or Oprah in the 70s, so I wonder if that was ad lib, but I think they might.
We changed a few.
Okay, gotcha. Because I was in the
I had
70s
to
too,
spend
I'm
10
just saying.
minutes trying to describe Robert Redford to them, and we just finally
Donnie
changed
was
that to
big at
George
that time.
Clooney.
Okay.
Oprah was just
what
coming
a-
on the scene. And
What a fun project. So I look forward to it in January. Thank you very much, you guys.
And Chris Crutcher is going to attend, and if he can't work it out, he's gonna send a video recording to show to, at the start of
Oh.
the show for the audience, so.
What a nice gesture.
Yeah,
What a nice
yeah.
gesture. Director Alt?
What a gift. Thank you for so much for sharing and giving us insight into your collaborative process. And you are a group of young adults. The way you have presented tonight and the way you described your experience. So go for it, and best of luck to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I caught this comment, and this is really a testament to Dave Helke and all the staff at Burnsville High School, but that you haven't experienced some of the bullying and some of the experiences that the main character did. That caught my ear, and I'm so proud of that, being part of this district. So keep it going over there.
That is something that I have noticed and I've talked about with other people is kind of, I just think I mentioned it one day. I was like, we don't really have much bullying at BHS that you like see, and they were like, yeah, we don't. So
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, from all of us, once again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing, and
Thank you.
best of luck over the next few weeks.
thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Good job.
Okay, we're going to move into our business meeting, and first up would be approval of tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions, comments about tonight's agenda? Seeing none, all in favor of approving tonight's agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. We'll then move into the consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. In the event a board member wishes to discuss an item, that item will be moved to separate consideration. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
First, I
Oh.
move an item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just number 7, because I want to have a discussion more than anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can actually do that after
Oh,
we move it
okay.
too, but yeah, that's okay. All right, are there any other items, since we're talking about them, any other items that need to be removed? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any other questions or comments, or items to remove? Hearing none, all in favor of tonight's consent agenda, with the exception of item 7 being pulled out for separate consideration, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And we are carried. And we'll now move into the item number 7. Approve change orders, a whole number of them. Why don't I turn the floor to you and explain?
Do we have to take a motion first?
Move item number 7 on the consent agenda.
I have a motion? Second?
Thank you.
All right, any?
Yeah, so I just have a general question, Lisa, and this could have pertained to any of the change order items, but now that we'll say the big part of the project is done, and so we have, I think I added up as like 56 or 57 total individual contracts. And most of them are still open, and I understand why, punch list items and all that stuff. And so we want to get through certain periods to, make sure things are in working order, whether it's the HVAC system, the roofs aren't leaking. I'm just curious how long the contractors allow us to keep those open so that we can make those claims, and when we'd expect to start either them closing them out or us closing them out. There has to be a certain period in which we can't call them anymore and say, you know what, the roof's leaking, you have to come and fix it. So I'm just curious what that period is, just to set expectations, on when we'll start seeing some of these close out.
We're starting to do some substantial completion closeout documents. From that substantial completion, we'll have a year's warranty from that date.
From the closeout date, right?
The closeout
Okay.
date, correct. We haven't closed out everything yet. We're still working on getting those closed out. So that, from the time we sign the document of closeout, substantial completion, we'll have a year's warranty.
Okay, and just one very particular question, so it's always curious to me. Bid package 2 was just one contract. It was the prefabbed walls, and yet it's not closed out. So I'm just curious why that one specifically, remains open. The walls are up, they've been up.
They're holding up.
They are.
Yeah, I'm just more curious than anything. I'm glad that we get another year until we close it out, but it's just some items were peculiar to me, why they'd still be open after, over a year.
Correct. I think I was actually doing pay apps today. A lot of those pay apps are down to retention. So we're retaining dollars, and we'll probably retain those until we know that everything is substantially complete. We're still working through even the walls right now, making sure that all the expansion joints are caulked and those types of things. This was a huge project, and it takes a lot of eyes to make sure that everything is complete before we do sign any substantial completion and finish paying out.
Yep, thanks. And by the way, that was my favorite contract. That was well below budget.
Yeah, well, I just want to add on to that. I think the struggle I've had and it may be a little bit different than Jim's, but it's hard to know with all those contracts which ones are actually have work remaining and which ones are essentially done, but you're doing, I'll call it just checklist items. So I think that's been, because every one of them looks like they're open, even though we've got most of these projects substantially complete. So I don't know if there's a way to identify, which ones actually have work remaining versus no work remaining. Because I think checklist items are checklist items, and if you're holding money to get that done, that's understandable, but essentially the work's done. And so I think some of them still have open work, correct?
There is some work still being done. On the heating systems, we're still working through some of that work. There's still some glass work that needs to be done.
Yep.
Some finish items that still need to be completed. But 99% of it is complete. So we still have contractors in the building daily right
Yeah.
now, finishing up some work.
Well, and again, I think that's the problem, is I think almost every one of those contract completions are in the 80s. They're not in the 99% range.
I was working on pay
Yeah.
apps today, and
Yeah.
the percents you're seeing right now are lagging right now.
Yep.
Those would have changed today, because I updated all my pay apps today. So those
Okay.
percents, they were getting closer to the closeout percent.
And maybe another question would be, so what date would you expect us to kind of see almost everything closed out? I mean, is it 2 months, 4 months?
Sometimes we keep retention for almost a year.
Really?
Yeah, and it really depends on if we feel that the contractor is not completing their project. We don't want to pay out retention
Yeah.
and then have to go back after a contractor to finish their job. And I'm not saying they're not finishing their job. We're just making sure that everything is complete before that retention is paid.
Okay.
And that's just protecting all the taxpayers
Okay.
that paid money to have this project done, so.
Sure. Thank you.
I think we also need to keep in mind that this is a construction management project, which does mean that you have a number of different contracts. However, there is a case in some of these circumstances where the punch list item that we're still working on might involve more than one contractor as well. So a piece might be done by the electrical contractor, but the data and communications might need to come in and do something else to make that completely done. So until we get through our complete list, so they go through and the construction management firm and architects go through and they do their own punch list. But then we have ours amongst our staff members too, where it's like, well, we thought this was going to happen, and so now we got to make sure, was it in the plans? Should it have happened? If so, then let's get that done. Or maybe it wasn't, and that's something then that we just need to put on our list of addressing on our own. So those are the kinds of things that we need to still vet through everything. We're in the process, but it's not complete. So we don't want to necessarily pay off retention on any of these contractors until we know our list is complete as well.
Yeah, and I think part of my concern, when I see 85% complete and the last 15%, for example, looks open, I don't know if I'm going to get a substantial change order and it's going to significantly impact the financial, where we sit financially. So when I see the open components of those orders, what I'm wondering about is how many last minute, because we had a lot of work that went on toward the end of the project. And so are we going to see substantial increases in change orders with that last 15%? So really, for me, that last 15% is worrisome, because I really don't have line of sight to, okay, the spending. Are we done spending, or are we getting close to being done spending or not?
Right.
So I appreciate the feedback and so forth, but that, in my mind, I just want to make sure, okay, we're not going to see another substantial increase in those last 15% complete documents that come through, if you will.
You raise a good point. We do need to make sure all the change orders are through.
Yep. Thank you.
We're getting close on the change orders too. I mean, they're still vetting some of these change orders, but we are getting close to that. And I've been asking for that as well.
Yep.
So we know exactly where we're at financially. But we're getting really close to being done with those change orders and bringing them to a close.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that'd be a great goal, so that the new clerk in 2017 doesn't have to sign a change order.
You actually want Jim to sign all change orders before we're done.
We're actually thinking of keeping you on an extra year, just in case, since you're so experienced at it now that, Okay, so are there any other questions or comments regarding item number 7? Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and read just to make sure we're doing this all above board. So all those in favor of approving change orders 153, 200, 203, 208, 209, 210, 212, 213, 214, and 215 for the 2015 additions and alterations to Burnsville High School. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And thank you for your continued laser-guided on all of the details that are going on with such a major, major project, and nearly not even just the high school. We've got a lot of projects across the district. So we'll go on to our new business. First up is to adopt a resolution canvassing the returns of votes of the school district general election. And we have our Executive Director of Business Services, Lisa Ryder. Thank you, Lisa.
So on November 8th was the general election, and included in that were some school board members' terms who were up, and so there was a vote with regard to those individuals who were running as candidates. And tonight is the night to canvass the returns of the votes for the school district election that was held on November 8th. I'm not sure how much of this resolution you would like read, or how you'd like to handle that best.
I don't think we have to read the whole thing from a legal perspective, do we? No, just the general sense of it, I think would be fine.
All right, so I'll start with, under the resolution number 2, as specified in the attached abstract, in return of votes cast, a total of 54,940 voters of the district voted at said general election on the election of 3 school board members for 4-year term vacancies on the board caused by expiration of term on the first Monday in January next following the general election as follows. Eric Miller received 15,143. Darcy Schatz received 14,943. Dee Dee Courier received 14,473. Scott Hume received 13,856. Write-in was 478. Eric Miller, Darcy Schatz, and Dee Dee Courier have received the highest number of votes, are elected to 4-year terms beginning on the first Monday in January 2017.
Thank you. This is an action item. Do I have a motion to adopt the canvassing of returns?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion second. Are there any questions or comments from board members?
There is just a point of clarification. Are we sure it's the first Monday, or is it really the second Monday? Our board meetings are typically the second and fourth.
It's not on a Monday, but I think officially.
Oh,
that's
I
what
see.
it's
Okay.
So this is officially first work day, if you will,
We'll
of the month.
organize the board on the 12th.
Which,
Gotcha. Thank you.
yeah,
All right.
good question, though. I like that. That's good. Now, yes, Director
Stumped
Vandenboom.
me.
Can I just say congratulations? I think all 3.
Oh, sure, scoop me.
top
Just
vote
go ahead and
winners,
scoop me.
are here, so congratulations.
I said I was about to do that, but yes,
Sorry about that.
that's
I didn't mean to
okay.
steal your thunder.
That's all right.
Congratulations.
Just a few more weeks and then I'm
Thank
off of
you
there.
for
So. But yes, I do want to congratulate Dee Dee, returning for another, and then also Eric Miller in our audience, and as well as Darcy Schatz, excuse me. I'll get that down here soon. Being a part of our board, it's a welcome. But we're also going to have a couple board members that'll be moving on to other things, and Director Hill is here, and Director Mack, and was not able to make tonight, but we will spend a little more time around them at the next meeting. So you guys will have to hold off, and we'll talk about the times we've had with you.
I'll do all the talking.
I'll bet you will. All righty. So are there any questions or comments? All in favor of adopting the resolution as read to us for canvassing the returns of the votes of the school district general election, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, would approve the financial audit as of June 30th, 2016, and Lisa will continue with that too. So do you like those chairs and desk there, kind of table, when you have these long nights?
Thank you. I want to welcome Dennis Hugavine from Clifton Larson Allen, and he represents the audit firm that was here for a week and a couple extra days this last September for final field work, with preliminary work occurring in July, I believe it was. So tonight, we have before you the financial audit report for the fiscal year of 2015 through 2016. Our fiscal year begins July 1 and ends June 30th. And so after that year is over, then that's when we put together the audit work for those at home listening. And then we perform an audit where a third party comes in and takes a look at all of our financial statements and reviews everything that we have prepared. So Dennis is going to present to you their report as that third party. And I'm going to turn this over to Dennis and let him speak to this after I...
Well, Lisa does that. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. It's amazing how fast the year goes. But we did live through the construction, and I must say it reminded me that I can remember back to my college days. So when I did an internship in Northwest Iowa, it was for a CPA firm that did a lot of grain elevators. And literally, you'd have cats and mice, and then whenever the tractors would drive in with the deliveries of grains, the dust would filter down on top of your work papers, and it kind of felt a little bit like that. So we were in that, I'd set up a few different times with Gordy and Lisa in the cafe, so. But it turned out beautifully, so it's nice to see that all auditors survived the dust, and it turned out beautiful, so thanks for having me. There's 183 pages of information, and we're not going to spend 2 hours to go through 183 pages. So what we've done, as in past years, is extracted key elements of the 3 documents to put into a PowerPoint. So to the extent you have questions, if they come to mind as I'm going through it, certainly ask those, or certainly I'll ask you again at the end. As Lisa said, we're issuing 3 different bound reports. The district puts together a comprehensive annual financial report, which is, the acronym is CAFR. And that's in accordance with the requirements of the ASBO Certificate of Excellence program. So we fully expect that you're going to continue to win that award. It really is an indication that the community is holding itself out to a higher standard in terms of accountability and financial information that's available. So it's a great report. Before I get too far down into that, I do want to thank the business office, Gordy, and all of the finance staff, and also Lisa and her team. You would be amazed, I have no doubt, if you saw the number of people that get involved in the audit process. And every year it seems like it's more and more. Our goal as auditors is to be the eyes and ears of board members. We take that responsibility very seriously. And we're always trying to challenge the business office. And I don't think we had any tears this year, but I mean, our role is really to challenge them and find new ways of accessing information. So we're always trying to do it very cost effectively and utilizing technology. And so we've got some really exciting things that we're coming up with in terms of the use of software to take advantage of the information that you've got going. And yes, it causes some frustration occasionally with the business office, but in the end, it's very well worth it. And we've made some really good investments in terms of how long it takes to prep this CAFR, for example. So we put a lot of work into that this year in terms of mapping account codes, and Gordy can speak to how much time he invested in that. But it will pay off, even though it's frustrating at the time. So we appreciate all the hard work that they put into that process, because most of the heavy lifting, of course, is done here. So of the 3 reports, then we have the CAFR, and of course, I'm going to cover the various opinions on that. And then what we do is we extract the pieces that the ASBO certificate's not interested in, like the single audit, the student activity audit, the legal compliance audit. So we pull those out of there. They don't want those as part of the CAFR, so they're under a separate down document. We'll talk through the outcomes of those. And then our communication to you as a board is in our executive audit summary. We call that, some firms call it the management letter, but we think it's more than that. We think it's got some insightful commentary and things like that. So that's why we call it our executive audit summary. And it's really structured to give you the option, if you have only 5 minutes and you want a quick kind of overview, that's kind of laid out in the front, and then it gets into more in-depth, as time permits and things like that. So having said all that, I'm going to walk through the PowerPoint, and we'll go through the audit results. So again, the main thing that you're hiring an auditing firm to do is to give an opinion on the CAFR, the financial statements, and we've issued a clean or an unmodified opinion, so it's as good of an opinion as we're able to give any Minnesota school district, so that's always what you want to hear. In terms of other things in the CAFR, I would highly recommend that if you're not a board member that likes to read things from cover to cover, and there are some people that do like to do that, but there's also a section at the front that's called Management's Discussion and Analysis, which is pages 13 through 25. And Lisa, I believe, writes a lot of that. So she does a very good job, very thorough job of kind of writing some commentary that you'd find insightful, again, as far as why did this happen, why did revenues increase, why did budget to actual outcomes come out the way they did. So if you want, and anybody who's listening, I believe these reports will be made available on the district's website once you accept them. So I encourage anybody that does have an interest in school finance to read those, because they are well done, and you will find that commentary interesting, I think. So because we're following governmental auditing standards, we're required to issue an opinion on, it's called the Yellow Book opinion or Yellow Book compliance. It has 2 aspects to it. It's got compliance with grant covenants and things like that, but there's also an internal control aspect to it. And most years we have nothing to report in terms of internal control aspects. So on the compliance aspect of that Yellow Book letter, we had nothing to report. In terms of the internal control aspect, we did propose one adjustment that we ran across as part of the audit that required us to propose an entry, and because it was material to that fund level, is actually in the food service program, I think. And I believe it had something to do with the turnover that the school district had experienced. And again, it's not that uncommon when you have turnover and you're still trying to figure out, the audit occurs in kind of inopportune time while you're still trying to figure out what, if that everything is all covered and you've got new people coming in. So again, from my point of view, it's not the end of the world, because it just happened to be a material amount related to some food service receipts that needed to be posted. So we're required, we don't have a choice in terms of, but reporting that as a finding. So then, because you expended more than $750,000 as a school district for the year, and those thresholds went up this year, so it used to be $500,000 and now it's $750,000, but you're well above that. But they also backed off in terms of what some of the thresholds are in terms of meeting the coverage that you're required to have. So if you're a low-risk auditee, you can get by with 20% now. It used to be 25%. And if you're not a low-risk auditee, it went from 50% down to 40%. So for this particular year, all we had to audit for the single audit was the child nutrition program. And again, I'm happy to report that there were no findings in relationship to our work on the child nutrition program. So the next opinion that we give you is on your adherence to Minnesota legal compliance. We have a very thick set of checklists that are put together by the Office of the State Auditor. And again, very, very possible that a district would have some level of legal compliance exception. It's very easy to happen, and it almost never has anything to do with the business office. But we had nothing to report for 2016. So again, the most common would be, as an example, would be the prompt payment of bills is a fairly common one. If you have an invoice that's sitting on somebody's desk, an administrator's desk or a teacher's desk, that's why I say it almost never relates to the business office, because everything that they're given within a reasonable period of time, they pay on time, because they're very aware of those deadlines and they're very aware of not wanting to have findings and things like that. So they work very hard to not have that happen. But so you had a clean opinion on your Minnesota legal compliance. And then you also hire us to do a student activity audit. For this year, we had the same finding as we've noted in past years: use of inactive student activity accounts. That's technically not allowed under the MAFA guidance. And again, a lot of districts have that particular comment, because you never know from one year to the next if a group is going to activate their funds, and you could have some people take a year off and things like that. So technically, if there's no activity, that's not technically allowed. The guidance in the manual is to get rid of those accounts if they're inactive. And then there was one improper disbursement that was noted, I think for a coach disbursement or something that we had noted. So those cover the audit opinions, all the different ways. And so again, there are lots and lots of different ways where you could potentially have findings, but for the most part, you got a complete, clean report in terms of the audit opinion on the financial statements, the legal compliance, the single audit. We just had the one thing to note, and the student activities, except for the things we talked about, and then the one finding related to the proposing of a material audit adjustment. I extracted a summarized version of the statement of net position. We talked more about that last year, because last year was the first year where you had a major change to that statement, where it was the first time in terms of governmental accounting where there was a significant liability added to that statement of net position that you had nothing as a board to say about that, which was unusual, because normally anything that was reflected on that prior to 2015, you as a board negotiated that with bargaining groups, or the public gave you the authority to issue bonds for, improvement of facilities, things like that. So this was the first year. So I included it here again. I don't know if we will every year or not, but the middle line there, net pension liability, you can see for 2016 was $77 million. So basically the statement of net position is simply taking the entire district, all the different funds, slamming them all together into one column. So it's all of the district's assets, and including capital assets, less the accumulated depreciation, less all of the accumulated long-term debt. And then some measurement of whatever's left over is called net position. And you can't call it fund balance, because that was already a term that was used at the fund level, so they call it net position. But it's basically your net equity of what the district would have left over if you liquidated and sold everything off and things like that. So your net position has historically always been a positive number, but like most school districts, with the advent of the GASB 68 to record your estimated share of that unfunded portion of the statewide pension plans of TRA and PERA, it became a negative number. So again, it's not the kind of liability that you could even pay, even if you wanted to. It's just something that, and GASB unfortunately made it unnecessarily complicated in terms of how you have to record it. It's lots of ins and outs and amortization of things over periods of time and deferred inflows and outflows and, but the net impact is what we've kind of highly summarized here. So I just wanted you to know that you're in the same pretty much boat as most districts. I would say you're better off in that without that line, a lot of districts were also negative without it. So you were in a net positive position before the GASB decided that you needed to reflect that on your books. And it was really only, as you recall, last year because there was nowhere else for it to go. So it's all the member governmental entities that are paying into those statewide pension plans that are recording that liability. And you're getting basically the brunt of both the employer and the employee share. So just wanted to revisit that with you, but just remind people that it had nothing to do with what you as a school board decided. You would have been in a net positive position without that GASB being implemented last year. So in terms of summarizing how the general fund turned out for the year, the next page is simply a summary of just the general fund. And you can see we always like to draw to your attention for the general fund back to the unassigned category, which is up at the top. So you started the year at unassigned fund balance at $14,849,000, which ended up for the end of the year at $15,748,000, or 13.09% of expenditures. So again, a very positive outcome. That's a healthy place to be, pretty comparable to similar sized school districts, I would say, maybe a little bit higher, but you've done a really good job. And we're going to look at that more from a historical trend over the past 5 years, but that's a good place to be. The net bottom line, you can see there, the total revenue variance was 2.69%. And I think if you were to read that MD&A like I recommended, and also our executive audit summary makes the point too, that both the revenue and the expenditure line items were grossed up this year by a $1.5 million entry that was an in and an out, related to the fact that the Duluth Teachers Retirement Association merged into the statewide pension plan, and the state kicked in a significant amount of money. And so unfortunately, you wouldn't have been able to budget for that because nobody knew what that number was until TRA sent out letters in August. So just keep that in mind in terms of those percentages are being affected by that revenue and expenditure entry. It had no impact on net fund balance, but both the revenue and the expenditure variance were grossed up by about $1.5 million. So I did want to point out, for example, the restricted category. So when the legislature provides new funding to a school district, it's not uncommon for them to attach strings to it, and they use the restricted categories of UFAR's codes to help do that. So as an example, I wanted to point out, under the gifted and talented line, it's under item D there for restricted for gifted and talented. You can see that the state statute requires you to spend only $129,000 on your gifted and talented program, as an example. And so the way we present it here, you can see that you actually expended $680,000 for gifted and talented, or over $500,000 above and beyond what the minimum that you're required to do. And that's why we present it that way. You can see that the extra funds that are occurring under the approved transfer column are coming from the unassigned category. But that's something you've decided as a school board that you want to invest in that. And I think for the most part, the public appreciates that you're investing in things like that. And you could go through the other categories as well, basic skill, staff development, things like that. So that's why we present it like that. But very good outcomes in terms of the net bottom line impact. I think historically, the net variance has been comparable to what this one was. And I guess, it's just a positive place to be. And again, we'll see that again a little bit more from a historical perspective once we do more of a 5-year trend. But you had a really good outcome for 2016 in that the variances weren't enough to have had a significant amount of regret about what you would have done differently had you had different information. In terms of governmental accounting, auditors always want the outcomes to come out slightly better. And we always want the revenues to be slightly higher than what was budgeted. We want the expenditures to be slightly lower than what was budgeted. And any time it comes out like that, we've considered that a good year. The next page is just looking at some of the other funds. Then the food service program continues to be very strong financially. You started the year with a fund balance that was 1.755 and ended the year at $1,742,000. And again, note that the net variance between the budgeted outcome and the actual outcome was within about $30,000. So again, those resources are available to improve your child nutrition program from a standpoint of capital needs of the program and things like that as those needs arise. And I don't know how much of your recent bond work has involved. Okay. But it is there for that purpose. It's basically has to only be spent on child nutrition needs. But in terms of the community service fund, you can see there that the revenues came out $290,000 higher than the actual amended budget, and correspondingly, the expenditures were about $500,000 higher than the amended budget. So the outcome on the far right there was about $200,000 different than the ending fund balance. And of that reduction in fund balance from the $800,000 down to the $540,000, about $100,000 of that was capital needs that the program had, that those would be considered more one-time investments in the capital needs of that program. So, and again, as you were discussing prior to getting into this particular audit presentation, the capital projects under the Building Construction Fund, those resources are getting spent down as intended, and that'll just continue to happen. In terms of the debt service program, and thank you for running that for me, I keep forgetting to proceed on that. The debt service fund, you can see there, in terms of the operating portion, the bond refunding portion, and then an OPEB portion. The bond refunding is sitting in an escrow account waiting to refund some bonds at significant savings to their taxpayers. So again, it's very proactive of you to see opportunities like that to save taxpayers money, and it can't be used for anything other than that. So in terms of your internal service funds, they're functioning as intended. You know, particularly like the health insurance, self-insurance fund is working as designed in terms of stabilizing rates and things like that. So very good outcomes on that. So I guess that's main things I wanted to point out in terms of ending fund balance and activities. So on the next slide is just looking at the general fund balance activity, as I indicated, from a historical perspective. And again, you can see how total expenditures have increased. And again, keep in mind that for 2016, they would have actually decreased in the absence of that $1.5 million entry for the TRA flow-through related to the Duluth merger of the teacher's retirement for Duluth. And again, take the time to appreciate the great outcomes you've got in terms of that very bottom line there on that page on the unassigned category of fund balance. So again, even though the district has been experiencing some decline in enrollment, you've still been adjusting accordingly as you've gone along, and you've, again, had outcomes that are very much planned. So I guess that's what would be the main story for me as someone that is observing a slight decline in enrollment. You're adjusting things accordingly, and that's an important aspect of maintaining that fiscal health over the long term. In terms of the next slide, the open enrollment, I guess, is the key story there. You had an increase in the amount of open enrollment out versus the open enrollment in. So your resident enrollment is pretty stable, but you've seen some decline in terms of the net number of students served versus those opting out. And I didn't break it out, but just as an example, the open enrollment out includes about 285 students going to charter schools. I just thought that was interesting to see how much of the open enrollment was relating to charter schools specifically. The next slide is just looking at the historical perspective of the general fund revenues. And again, it's impacted by the $1.5 million entry for the TRA. Otherwise, it would have actually declined because of the decline in the enrollment, even with a 2% formula improvement. So the legislature has not been investing state surpluses necessarily in the formula allowance for some reason. So hopefully that will change. Who knows, though, with the change in the election. I did want to point out for 2014, for anybody that might notice just the difficulty of explaining school finance. When you look at the top line there for local property taxes from 2013 to 2014, you'll recall that was the year the legislature paid back the tax shift entry. So in 2011, which isn't reflected on here, they took $8.6 million of cash away from you to balance the state's budget, and then they give it back to you in 2014. So it looks like this huge increase in state aid, when in reality, it's simply an accounting mechanism that the legislature uses to balance the state's budget. So we want to point that out to people. It had zero impact on what the individual taxpayers of the district paid. And again, I think people perceive that their taxes is a higher percentage of what funds the school district than is really the case. Again, I think this is always interesting to see how much of the funding actually is derived from state and federal sources versus local taxpayers. But I did want to point that out from 2014. The next slide is looking at just simply dividing the total general fund expenditures by the number of students served. And again, your trends are very, very comparable to what I've seen with other metro school districts. It seems like those more and more things are getting rolled into that general fund. We've had years, if you've been around long enough, you remember that transportation didn't used to be included here, or capital expenditures used to have its own fund, things like that. And with all of the different changes in terms of special ed and the $1.5 million flowing through both as a revenue and expenditure for the TRA on behalf payment that never even came through your books, all those things are making it look like there's all this money flowing in, when in reality, what you're dealing with in terms of the actual education of students has changed, not that significantly in terms of like the general ed formula like we talked about, with just 2% improvement in that. So the next slide is just simply taking all of your expenditures of your general fund and having it all laid out in 6 different categories. So salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, et cetera. And again, I'm always amazed at how close school districts can get at the bottom line. So the board approved budget for the general fund had revenue or expenditures coming in at 121 million. You were able to hold those to about 120 million. Actually, it was lower than that because of the 1.5. Again, the reason that we don't want to get too cutesy with putting, asterisks and different things and explaining it is because people start distrusting numbers that you're trying to put smoke and mirrors up. We're trying to literally take the data, but then you can tell how hard it gets to explain, like, but except for the 1.5 million. So, but regardless, the outcomes are very good. You guys do a very good job in terms of budget development and monitoring. So again, if you start taking out things that are timing differences, like with capital programs, or the fact that you allow carryover, for example, if you go back to that fund balance sheet, you allow site carryover, so you don't want to have a user to lose it kind of a mentality. So that's a good thing. So any dollar that wasn't spent that's reallocated, either for staff development or supplies and things like that, are part of that variance as well. So again, really good outcomes from my standpoint. In terms of the food service program, we've had districts that have really had some struggles with trying to figure out, under the new federal guidelines, how to keep that meal count going up. So again, what this tells me is that you found a way to do that. So I would assume that food service department is doing some innovative things to get kids to continue to participate in the program. So again, a little bit unusual in that regard, because we've seen some actually decline that's going on over these last couple of years. But the last slide is just simply looking at your expenditures per ADM using the statewide profiles data that it gets published every year by the Department of Education. And again, the apples to apples comparison for Burnsville, Egan, Savage is the middle column on the far right there, the 2015 column. Of course, we don't have statewide data yet published for profiles for 2016. So you can see where you're right at the 7-county metro area average. And I think that's historically been the case. I don't think there's any surprise there. But again, school board members generally like to see where you're falling in terms of similar school districts. Those were the things that I had marked or extracted from the other documents to go over with you in terms of the PowerPoint. Again, we sincerely appreciate all the hard work that goes into all 183 pages of the financial information. And so I will stand for any questions that anyone might have for me.
This is an action item, so I will ask for a motion to approve the financial audit as of June 30th, 2016.
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll open it up then, formally to any questions or comments. Director Schmidt.
Hey, thank you very much for that presentation and, the 184 pages of documents. Few key questions. On page 28 of the executive summary, it talks about a separate letter under other audit findings. I don't recall seeing a separate letter. I certainly don't see it in this packet. So is that something that we didn't receive, or?
Did you catch that page, Emma?
You said that in the executive audit summary?
Yeah, page 28, under other, I assume it's related to food services, but it specifically says, "We have provided a separate letter to you dated November 1st, 2016, communicating internal control-related matters identified during the audit."
Okay, one moment.
That's, yeah, I'm not there yet either.
So I guess my point is, or question is, I don't recall seeing that. Did I miss it, or did we not receive it?
That is something that, I don't think that we're referencing anything other than what's already been provided in the executive audit summary.
So this is, you have many different letters
Right.
of opinion within this. And so the communicating the internal control related matters is one of those letters that I believe is in the front of the CAFR.
I looked there, but yeah, if you can point me to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, and rather than taking up our time right
Yeah, you
now,
can
maybe
send
we'll
an email.
respond to that
That's fine.
separately.
Second question, then I think I'm done. I thought I heard you mention, but maybe I didn't pick up on it, was in other findings besides student activity accounts, did you say the word coach? Was there a finding?
So I emailed our athletic director with regard to, when they test, they go through and take a look at the actual documentation as to what something was for as an expenditure. And one of them was for a clinic that actually sent a coach versus a student. That should have been paid for from the general fund and not out of the student activity fund. So that is the finding.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that clarification. Thanks.
Superintendent Gothard, I believe found the letter.
Yeah, the letter is referenced, Director Schmidt, on page 3. It's a 3-page letter, signed November 1st. So
Of
that's what it's
our
referencing. It's
executive
in the schedule of expenditures, the required report. So the supplementary one.
All right, thanks.
Other question? Dr. Vandenboom?
It's a general question, so, and this is really for Lisa, probably, Dennis, but, Lisa, other than coming to the board, is this a report that's required for the state every year? So so where else does this report go to other than, the board and the district? So it goes to the state of Minnesota, does it go to the federal government as well?
Yes. So the single audit is reported to the federal government. The CAFR is something that, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report is something that we forward to the national organization, ASBO, for a review by other peers, and they compare that to the criteria in order to determine whether or not there is enough material here that it reaches the caliber for the Certificate of Excellence Award in Financial Reporting. So that's done as well. There is a state statute which requires the audit be completed by an outside third party, and that is done every year. By November 30th, we must report all of the electronic information through the state system.
Okay.
And by December 31st, we must report in writing these reports, and they're issued. When we got our written reports, they were also sent over then to MDE as well.
And the Office of the State Auditor.
And an audit is required annually by state statute as well? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Director Hill, I knew you would.
Page 4, management summary, or the executive summary. On the, under item, or letter D, the restricted for, the amounts that are listed there, those are amounts that would appear in the, I'm just trying to understand, would they normally be in the committed line?
No, so these are dollars that we have a specific purpose for which revenues have been generated by the
Right.
state. And the purpose of those revenues must be used for that type of expenditure only.
Right.
Okay? So operating capital is a good example, right? So listed under here, you will see operating capital is the second up from the bottom. And so there's a certain dollar amount per pupil that we receive for operating capital purposes. And that revenue then that is received, that portion must be spent, or if it's not spent, we have to reserve it so it can be used for that purpose in a future time.
Okay,
And
so-
if that's the case, then it's state statute that requires it, so it's restricted. versus being
okay,
committed.
I just want to make sure. So the very first line up there, the 15,748,000, that's unreserved, undesignated, or just undesignated?
We actually got away from
unassigned.
using that terminology a
Right,
few years
right,
ago,
but-
but now we call it unassigned. So it's
Unassigned.
basically where you can make decisions about.
There's no restrictions from a state statute or a board-committed purpose at this time on those dollars.
And that's the fund balance we tend to refer to when we're
When we're planning,
doing our
that's what
financial
we're
planning,
focusing
right?
on.
Yeah.
Right.
And you took formal board action in June, I believe, for your committed category. You can only put committed by board action by putting it in and taking
Right,
it
no,
back
I
out.
understand all that, all those pieces and everything. I thought we kept those dollars separate, on a separate line, on a committed line, or a,
They are, right below the A is the B section, or I'm sorry, C where am I? It's C. So the non-spendable, that's our prepaids, okay? But then you see C for committed, that's the program carryover and the ProPay program. Those are
Right.
the two areas that the board approved in June to be committed, but you didn't give a dollar amount because we needed the audit to calculate those amounts. So these are the amounts calculated through the audit process.
okay.
And the
they
restricted
are-
are restricted by,
So when we receive gifted and talented
Something.
dollars, for example, we received, I'm not sure what we received in the.
129.
But those dollars that we receive for GT, for example, are not figured into the calculation of the on-reserve, I'll call it the unassigned?
No, because they are dollars that have been by statute determined that they have to be used only for gifted talented. So if we had no gifted talented expenditures at all in our district,
Right.
that amount of revenue would have to be held in a restricted reserve
I'm just
for
trying to
that
figure out,
purpose only.
then, I'm confused as why the 2,011,000 is subtracted out then of the unassigned fund balance up there,
So in the cases where we spend more than the revenue that's required by the state,
right?
then it's in essence taking from the unassigned dollars. And so instead of us, I mean, the 680,000 that was spent in GT, for example, is 551,000 more than what the revenue was that the state said had to be spent. So we made a choice to use what might otherwise have been unassigned dollars.
Okay, so, let me state a little bit, so the $551,000 in GT that we spent more than planned,
More
No, not
than,
more than you needed to by statute,
more than,
not planned.
okay,
more than what the state said we had to, because there's a statute that says you must spend at least this much per student.
And they fund it, so they tell you it's part of the general ed formulas.
but that's the number of dollars I spent over and above, and I assigned it to the GT line from what I received from the state.
Based on a particular FIN code, so the UFAR system has a particular FIN code that tracks all of these
Right,
restricted
right,
balances. And that's what you spent over and above what you had to.
Okay,
So when we have a gifted and talented position, that's where we're coding it to that finance, in that case, finance 318. And so we're always comparing what is revenue that was required, how much did we actually spend, and when we spend more than what was required, then you see it coming out of the unassigned line, because had we not chosen to do that, it would have increased your unassigned fund balance.
do we carry, so we do carry some, I don't want to use the word fund balance, but we carry a balance in each one of these committed areas, right? Because some years, I know we don't spend all of our statute-given dollars.
The only areas in which we have not spent over the years, the statute-required dollars are in the two areas that still have a remaining balance, which is our Area Learning Center and our operating capital. So in those two areas, over the years, at one point or another, it's accumulated, this is the current balance as of June 30th, and those are the dollars that over the years we hadn't spent in those restricted areas as provided by
Okay,
statute.
so this is my final comment. So essentially, that 2,011,000,
Yep,
it's, in essence, really part of the total audited expenditures.
It really is. Some districts choose not to present it this way. Some districts would only put the 129 of revenue in and 129 of expenditures out.
Right.
They would leave all of that expense up in the unassigned category. And we give you the options, so when we're reviewing this as a draft, we say, this is one way you could present it, and you've chosen, you're giving us that feedback, even though this is our report to you as a school board, we want to present it in a way that meaningful to you as a board. So we're saying, let's tell the public that we spent over $500,000 on gifted and talented, that we didn't have to.
So this is the final question, is skip down to staff development then. Just curious as, we spent $2,050,000, planned for 1.2 mil.
No, not planned, again,
No,
what you statutorily were required to
received.
spend, yeah, what they
2%.
funded, yeah.
So statute requires that we spend 2% towards staff development.
So I shouldn't look at the staff development numbers in this section here. They really have no bearing on, how do I want to say this? What we spent in staff development.
So
Well-
Director Hill, maybe I could help. This isn't what we budgeted.
Right.
To spend in these categories.
Right,
This is
right.
what's statutorily required. And so maybe it would be helpful, do we budget for gifted and talented? I assume the answer is yes.
Yes.
Right.
And I assume in a different report, we would see what we actually budgeted and.
Sure.
Yeah. But, so for example, in staff development, we spent about $870,000 more than what we statutorily
Right.
received. Not budgeted,
Right.
but just statutorily received.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move to the question, which is, to move and seconded to approve the financial audit as of June 30th, 2016. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And I would say thank you to your staff, both your staffs, for this. I know it's a lot of work and a little dust this year, I understand all of that. But thank you very much for all your efforts, and it's quite a weighty amount of data here for us that really, yeah. Takes a while to get through it each year, but thank you again very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up would be to accept Director Mackel's resignation effective as of December 1st, 2016. I would let you know that I have received a letter from Director Mackel indicating her need to do this. Just a little bit of feedback, I think most of us know this, is she had made the determination that she was not going to run for another term, and so she would have been finishing up, I guess it's the first Sunday in January, I guess, if you will, however that works out. But she's had a job opportunity arise that is going to require her to move out of the district, and so the need for her to resign rather than retire, I guess, if you will, a month later. So, do I have a motion to approve Director Mackel's resignation?
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting Director Mackel's resignation as of December 1st, 2016, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now, as a result of Director Mackel now having been accepting her, she also was an officer. And so we have a little brief period of time where we do need by statute to fill that position. And so we'll have to have a little approval of appointing a treasurer. Director Courier, I have talked to, and is willing to fill that role for a few weeks for us. So I would entertain a motion to appoint her.
So
Motion to
moved.
appoint Director Courier as treasurer.
Director Hill, do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Director Courier.
I think the staff will be very happy there's a treasurer, so that the paychecks and Lisa will be very glad too, so that things can get paid in the district, and I'm pleased to do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Courier, for stepping up for the cause of the board as a whole. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of appointing D.D. Courier as our treasurer for the remaining term, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. We now move to business item number E, approve on a first reading basis policy 533, wellness, and Dr. Gothard will be presenting this to us.
Thank you very much. Members of the board, tonight I'll be asking you to approve on a first reading basis Policy 533, which is our wellness policy. The recommendation is that the Board of Education approves the first reading of Policy 533, which again is wellness. So, should we take up?
Oh, sure. So this is an action item as well. Do I have a motion to approve on a first reading basis?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. You want to continue? And
Sure.
then and then obviously questions and comments.
Thank you. This is really a policy that we're going to review frequently. And one thing that was added in our current review is a statement regarding food prepared at home was added to the policy to bring clarity to align with the policy in the student parent handbook. We actually got quite a good question from a parent, an elementary parent, I believe. I'm looking at Cindy in the audience, Cindy Amoroso, saying that there were two different interpretations in terms of food that's prepared at home and is it allowed to be brought to school. And our policy is now consistent, and that is not allowed in both cases, and that's during the school hours, as the full policy statement states.
Any questions or comments?
Just a quick question, because it says the state requires that it be obtained from appropriate sources, and then we talk about during the instructional parts of the day. So does the state actually identify the instructional part of the day separately from any other part of the day, or not?
We are simply using the instructional part of the day, and it's as much for accountability on our part as well, in terms of what we can supervise and have a duty to supervise and what we're not able to. Also recognizing that there are a lot of activities planned and times where there may be a need for food outside of the actual lunch program to be brought in for students to eat.
I mean, I'll just say it's a little confusing, because in essence, during the school day, it's inappropriate to bring food from home, but after school, it's okay. Then that's an appropriate food source. So that's the part I get a little bit confused about. I understand why we separated them out, because we do have a lot of events and a lot of things that have, home-prepared kinds of foods, and I'd hate, a lot of them are fundraisers, a lot of them are very positive things, but it's just it just seems to me like it's a little bit inconsistent, or it could be confusing and could create some issues.
I know Cindy Amoroso, our assistant superintendent, worked on this with the reference about the parent contacting us, so I'll allow her to address you.
What this is really getting at is that during the formal student day, we don't want food that's brought in other than that pre-prepared. What we're really wanting to make sure that we're not preventing is evening activities, PTO activities, carnival activities, those kinds of things where families are participating, where there may be potluck, where there may be bake sale. So that's really the difference between this. And so using the term instructional day is a very clear cut, where we know students are in session, they're a captive audience in those classrooms, and there's no parent involvement that would help give permission or be able to determine whether a child is going to be eating food brought from outside.
Does it
that
only
help?
relate to in classroom, or, so for example, is there a staff potluck in the staff room that's okay during the school day?
As long as they're not feeding it to the students.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, does that help?
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor of approving on a first reading basis, Policy 533, Wellness, indicate by signifying by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item up is to approve on a first reading basis Addendum A and Regulation 902R of Policy 902, Community Use of School Facilities. Do I have a motion? This is an action item. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Policy 902, again, with adding some additional space, this addendum to Policy 902 has been updated to include rental pricing for new spaces. Regulation 902R has been updated to clarify that the district approval is required before changing an initial facility reservation, and it also specifies which supplies must be furnished when renting a kitchen. The policy itself has not been changed, so it really is an addition to make sure that we are now accounting for our new spaces and new opportunities for users.
Any questions or comments? Dr. Schmidt.
You'd think the guy who sits on the policy committee wouldn't have any questions or comments, but here it goes. So interesting, if you look at 354, just for the other board members, Joe mentioned it, you know, we've already had interest expressed in renting the new outdoor patio and, you know, in that new beautiful entrance area. So those are additions you've seen, of course, the dance studio. But I did have one question. I know Tom's not here to answer it, so I'm okay with carrying it forward, but what came to me after, and I'm trying to page down to it, Joe, you mentioned it. I got to read this specifically. I'm sorry, I got to page down to it now. It was around the.
Is it on R?
Yeah, it is in R. It's around the cancellation. We added the red line. Oh, here it is. Item 3 on page 362. No changes. This is the new part. No changes may be made to the initial reservation without prior district approval. No reimbursements will be given for any facilities scheduled as part of the combined application which was unused. So it's not clear to me, will there be reimbursements if district approves a change? They're both no's, no and no. And so it's almost like a double negative.
If we can work with them to make a change that is authorized, then
Right.
we would make that adjustment.
Okay, and that's
yes.
what, I think that's the clarity I'm seeking. So as long as, if they receive the approval or authorization, then there will be a reimbursement.
Right.
Whereas if they don't receive it, they're gonna pay for it.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor of approving on a first reading basis Addendum A and Regulation 902R of Policy 902, Community Use of School Facilities, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. That will conclude our business portion of the meeting. We'll now move into our report section, and we're going to start off with Board of Education Committee reports, and I do have that up. There we go. Director Courier, Student Performance and Achievement.
Yes. The last Student Performance and Achievement meeting was on October 26th, and I reported it out at the October 27th meeting. Our next meeting is November 30th, so I'll report that out in December, and essentially I don't have a report.
Okay. All righty. Any questions for Director Courier? Assuming there isn't any. All right. Technology Committee, Director Hill.
Unfortunately, we had to cancel the technology committee. 2 members were out of town. And so.
Wasn't gonna work with one, huh?
One member decided the committee of one.
Right.
Could have called me, come join me. I was actually going to.
So our next meeting, I think, is scheduled December 8th.
So are you saying you don't have a report either?
That was it.
Long way of saying no report.
Okay. Policy Review Committee, Director Alt.
I have a very brief report.
Oh, you had a meeting, though.
We did have a meeting. Yeah, we had a meeting.
Okay. This will get better the next one. Go ahead.
And we continue, we have, I think, 5 or 6 policies left to sift through. And the goal really is to have the policy manual ready to go for the 2 new board members, so that it's all concise and in a nice and nice and tidy place.
A great milestone moment.
Yes.
And if I may, it's already posted for those of you who go to Board Book as December 31st. You can look at that beautiful 626-page document,
And you can search it.
and you can search.
Search it with numbers, not all letters, right?
That's
Is
right.
that the?
Yeah, we-
okay.
This probably be an appropriate time to let our 2 board members know that there will be a quiz on January 1. So we will hope that you have read that, was it 600?
626.
626 page policy.
We did, as a policy committee, decide, yes, that we'd only put the new policies in there. So any lettered ones that aren't done yet will not be in there.
Will not be in there,
Correct.
good.
And we meet next on December 6th.
6th, okay, super. So our final committee is a negotiating committee, and we no longer have a chair. Well, we soon will not, I guess officially not have,
December.
which is Director Mackel. But that is in a bit of a holding pattern right now anyways, and there is no activity to report on that.
There have been no meetings for that committee either, so that's
So
the
I said,
report.
No activity.
That's the report,
Yeah,
right?
that's the report. Absolutely. So that concludes our Board of Education Committee reports meeting, portion of the meeting. Our student representative.
Ready to go.
All right. I love the haircut, by the way. Looking good.
Thank you. It was time. All right, so it's been an eventful couple of weeks at Burnsville High School. As I'm sure most of you know, there was a small fire in one of the bathrooms. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, and everybody got out of the building quickly in a seemingly organized manner, and all was well afterwards. Recently, Burnsville Strong and in coalition with leadership groups at Burnsville High School went through and posted hundreds, if not possibly thousands, of positive messages and spread them around the school in order to boost morale and make sure everyone knows that the faculty and their fellow students care about them. Girls swimming is going to state. The event is at the University of Minnesota Aquatic Center at 6 p.m. on Friday. Adapted soccer for varsity is also going to state, and that is at Stillwater Area High School. Les Mis, the theater guild, is putting it on, and tomorrow and Saturday are the 2 remaining days to go see it. I hear it has been amazing, although I have not seen it myself yet. The Deca Blood Drive is coming up November 29th, and they are, I believe, have a goal of saving 500 lives. That's based off of what I remember from a couple of days ago on the forum. Multiple students have signed college letters of intent to play D1, D2, D3 sports at individual colleges. And then I have a final point of possible animosity that students have had so far this school year, and that is about the quarter system going in. And I believe that that is partially because there hasn't really been a clear definition of how it affects the students, and then more specifically how it affects CIS courses, AP courses, because there isn't an equal distribution of points in between first quarter and second quarter. So just figured I'd voice that.
Questions or comments? Thanks for bringing that up. Next up will be our report from our superintendent, Dr. Gothard.
Thank you. Partnerships, Pathways, and the Pipeline. It's been a really busy time at Burnsville High School and in our district. We've become a showcase for innovation. People are coming to see what we're doing with technology, curriculum, new programs, updated facilities, and more. For example, we just hosted a 5-event series called Partnerships, Pathways, and the Pipeline that brought realtors, business and civic leaders, leaders from other school districts, and from the Greater Twin Cities United Way. They had the opportunity to tour Burnsville High School's new learning spaces and learn about the programs that most closely align with their business. We also talked with them about how we can create partnerships to meet the workforce needs of our community. Many thanks to the BHS students who served as tour guides for the event. They did a great job and served as wonderful representatives for their school. Thanks also to the teachers who welcomed visitors into their classrooms. And special thanks to Dr. Kathy Funston, our Director of Strategic Partnerships and Pathways, for her leadership with this event. Just a lot of great excitement. I just want to add just a few things to this. And, bringing in the public to a brand-new high school in many ways, 10 weeks into 2,600 students, many new staff, lots of new spaces. It's a bit of a risk, and it was clear to me after the very first one that we did is that our staff, our students, Charlie talked several weeks ago about the change in culture, and what a proud moment to bring the community in and be so proud in showing them everything that is going on. And I think that's true for all of our schools. I think a lot of our focus has been on the high school because a lot of resources have been spent there. But I get that sense for our school district as a whole. There is a lot of great excitement going on. There are great things that our teachers are doing. There are risks that they're taking on a daily basis to reach our students in new and engaging ways. And it's just a really exciting time to be part of 191. So though the partnerships event is taking place at the high school, I'm proud of our entire district for what I really believe is an excellent first quarter in the midst of some really incredible changes in the district, in the history of the district. So a few other recognitions. Sioux Trail is staff members on cultural proficiency have earned the 2016 Local Government Innovation Award from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota. Sioux Trails project proved to be the top in innovation, impact, and sustainable and evident potential for growth, according to a spokesperson. As the top entry in the schools category, Sioux Trail will be awarded a $5,000 grant from the Bush Foundation. You can see a video about Sioux Trail's cultural proficiency work on our district website. Congratulations to Principal Shannon McParland and her staff members on this recognition. We also learned that we not only have an excellent art teacher at Harry Bishop and Mrs. Catherine Petrie, but she's also been awarded the 2016 Minnesota Art Educator of the Year Award. This award is presented by the Art Educators of Minnesota to outstanding teachers for their service and contributions to art education that merit recognition and acclaim. Congratulations, and I believe we'll be recognizing her at a future board meeting as well. I know you'd love to meet her. We also had a Nurse of the Year. Pam Walsher has been named the March of Dimes Minnesota Nurse of the Year in the Community Health Nursing category. Pam is a school nurse at Burnsville High School and works tirelessly to meet the needs of students, and we congratulate her as well. Finally, recently, the 191 members were among 10 recipients of the 2016 Community Builder Awards presented by the Burnsville City Council in October. Congratulations to Tyrese Leverty, a student leader at Burnsville High School, Christian Kibler, coordinator of the Burnsville Youth Collaborative, and Sean Lenhart, mentor for the Burnsville High School robotics team. They are certainly community strong, and we couldn't be more proud to have 3 representatives at the Burnsville City Community Builder Awards program this year. Thank you.
Fabulous, thanks. Board member reports? Anybody want to jump in? Director Alt.
This month has been chock full of events, giving rise to a multitude of opportunities to connect with our schools and our community. First, 191 had the honor of hosting a conversation focused on the implementation of the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, also known as ESSA, with MDE Commissioner Casilius, Minnesota Department of Education, is what the acronym stands for. The commissioner shared federal mandates under ESSA as well as her learnings thus far from local conversations across the state regarding preferences for implementing ESSA here in Minnesota. Varied and numerous questions came from a sizable audience, which represented 191 community members, board members, and staff, as well as students and educators from the metro area. For those who are unfamiliar, last December, ESSA was signed into law, replacing No Child Left Behind. ESSA is designed to give more local control of education at the state and school district level and expand support for a broader range of student groups. As you might expect, preparations for ESSA to enact ESSA in Minnesota continue to be a work in progress, with community input sessions ongoing. The commissioner shared her goal of concluding community input and analysis by early next year. With MDE continuing to welcome input from families, educators, and community members, I would like to encourage the 191 community to learn more about ESSA and share opinions with MDE to have your voices heard. Echoing Joe's report as well, the Realtor Summit panel, as well as the BHS open houses for career fields, opened our doors to the business community to experience BHS and the leaders of tomorrow currently walking our hallways. Thanks to Richard Tucker of Caldwell Banker Burnett, a sizable group of local realtors visited BHS and witnessed how 191 is shifting our programming to look to the future and increasingly prepare students for jobs that they themselves may create, or jobs which simply don't yet exist. After a tour and panel discussion, realtors shared how impressed they are with the education and opportunities 191 students enjoy. Similarly, open houses with tour groups organized by the Pathways themselves generated excitement among our guests and wonderings at where developing new partnerships might lead our students and business community. On behalf of the school board, I would like to offer heartfelt thanks to all of our guests for taking time out of their workday to learn more about 191 and our innovation in preparing our students for life after high school. This was truly a great month to be in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ault. Other board members? Okay, I've just got a couple things. One, not to, I know he doesn't want to toot his own horn there, but Joe was just recently named to receive the Mark McAfee Friend of Workforce Award by the Dakota Scott Workforce Development Board, given to an individual who has championed workforce issues at local, state, and/or federal levels. He joins quite a interesting list of past winners. We'll save that for later, but just to let you know, the award will be presented at a luncheon on December 16th. And so we congratulate you on that recognition. That's not only for you, but for the district as a whole, as I know you would quickly say. Second item is ties. We had our annual meeting yesterday, a successful annual meeting and a successful another year at ties. And I also want to point out, for those who are interested, the ties annual conference will be occurring on December 12th and 13th in downtown Minneapolis. If you're interested, let me know, or you can look up ties and you can get all the scoop on that as well. Third item I have is just something that happened today with me, and that is, and it was through my day job, my work. We do try to get out on a quarterly basis out into the community, and I brought my team here earlier this year for meals in a backpack, but we went to a group called Youth Link today, and I just want to bring a couple things forward from that experience, if I can get back to it on my board here. This is Youth Link is a nonprofit in downtown Minneapolis that helps young people between the ages of 16 and 23 on their journeys from homelessness to hopeful. We welcome young people of all backgrounds, races, genders, and orientations. And the part that I guess, we went down and we brought food and prepared and served a lunch, and then we had a bingo with the youth at that age group and so on today. But the thing about this that I always learn kind of an interesting fact, and not only you're getting visibility and exposure to people that maybe are less fortunate and dealing with things that we take for granted most days, but this jumped out at me, and I confirmed it with the executive director. YouthLink works with nearly 2,000 young people experiencing homelessness each year. 2,000 youth between the ages of 16 and 23. Just internalize that a little bit. And he said that we'll be getting involved soon south of the river. So be prepared. But anyways, I just thought it was just something I wanted to bring forward. Finally, our next meeting is December 1st. Prior to that meeting, from 5 to 6, correct, okay, from 5 to 6 in the campus comp here prior to the meeting, we will have a reception with board members, members of the district, and the public as a whole, the community as a whole, is for our two board members who will be departing at the end of December. So I just want to make people aware of that as well, and we encourage people to come and spend some time with our two soon-to-be departing board members, Director Hill and Director Mackel. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion is approved. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.